sky. To whom do these celestial steeds belong? When you appear to us like gods on high, which brings you here to mystify.
Hi, welcome to the Cape Valentine UFO Show. We're with you live on 1160 WVNJ. The good news today is that Ed Komarek is back with us. The bad news is that the 1 hour that we have for this interview is barely enough to cover even the main topics that he brings up in his brilliant, just published book, UFOs, Exopolitics, and the New World Disorder. Welcome to the show, Ed. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Kate.
Hi. Oh, you know, it's hard for me to know where I start to review your book with you. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to take a quote from your dedication and just read it. It's, if our leaders had not failed us in the 1940s and the 1950s, the positive vision of Star Trek could now have become our present-day reality. In this book, you will show that had our leaders embarked on a policy of openness and transparency in regard to extraterrestrial contact in the 1950s, rather than secrecy and cover-up, human evolution would have moved forward instead of backward, and the Earth's environment protected. That's quite a statement, and I think that's sort of the theme of your book.
Yes. Basically, what I try to do in the book is pull together my 40 years of experience in the field, and, you know, there's a lot of garbage out there and trash, you know, scammers and all this sort of thing, and what I try to do is, you know, sort through all that, sort through all the ore, and find those few gold nuggets. And what I did was take the best cases, both extraterrestrial contact and whistleblower testimony, and use that as a basis for my concepts in the book. And what I'm trying to do is bring people beyond the collection and analysis stage of intelligence work to a point where they move into the issues and implications of extraterrestrial contact. You know, not worrying about, you know, trying to figure out what happened at Roswell, or did Eisenhower meet with aliens in 1954, or what was that light in the sky, but what are the implications and issues regarding extraterrestrial contact. And the point that I'm making is that we're up against a formidable adversary of special interest that had the best intelligence available from the CIA and NSA MJ-12, in which they were all connected, to move right up from the collections and analysis stage up to implications and issues, and act on those issues in a way that's been very destructive for humanity in order to protect their own interests in corporate interest in industries. And the problem that we have is that people, you know, have a problem even getting to the issues and, you know, involving extraterrestrial contact, because they don't even know if UFOs exist or if they're extraterrestrial. And so I have to kind of take people step by step through the book, chapter by chapter. And for, like, in the first chapter, for instance, I start with, you know, evolution on other worlds. That there are many different types of extraterrestrials being reported, and we have some very good cases. And they seem to be evolving in ways similar to ourselves. But for instance, you know, if the asteroid hadn't hit the Earth and knocked the dinosaurs way back and leaving only the birds, an intelligent dinosaur may have evolved from this planet. If the asteroid had hit, it was even more destructive and killed off everything but insects. We know how tough insects are. The insects may have evolved an intelligent insect. And so this is basically what we're seeing in a lot of these, in the credible reports, that there are many different types of extraterrestrials, and they're interacting in many different ways amongst themselves and with us. And we really need to get up to speed on that. And in order to move into that area, into the Star Trek positive vision of our future, rather than the destructive vision and propaganda that's being, and brainwashing that's been applied to the public for the last 70 years by some elite corporate bankers, industrialists, and European royalty who essentially control access to extraterrestrial technologies for their own benefit to make trillions of dollars. And
then, of course, you have the involvement of the press and the media not doing their job and bringing it all to light. That's another thing. But I find it interesting. You know, you define yourself also as a naturalist and ecologist, and that is one thing that differentiates your book from others, is that you actually classify and describe various species of extraterrestrials that have been reported both by abductees and contactees. And I think it's essential to know who we're dealing with, and you bring that out. Frequently, some of the other authors just say ET, period, and they let it go at that. You are very specific as to who's here and what they might be here for.
Yeah, we need to know that before we can get into this issues and area, because it makes a difference, you know, if there's just one type or two types of ETs, or whether there's a whole bunch of different types. You know, how are we going to align ourselves? Are we going to align ourselves with the more advanced, ethically advanced races, or are we going to align ourselves more with, say, the Greys or the insectoid types that seem to be a lot like the Borg? You know, so it's kind of up to us. You know, what is how are we going to fit into this scheme of things? And before we can even begin to think about that, we have to realize that there's a lot of different types of extraterrestrial races being reported, even human extraterrestrials. That some that are almost exactly like us, to ones that are a lot different than us, that are very small, down to 18 inches or so, all the way up to 12, 13, 14 feet. Albert Rosales has done some of the best work on humanoid contact cases, and he has over 4,000 cases since the 1940s, that I reference in the book, and people having contact with a lot of different types of human or humanoid type extraterrestrials. So how do we fit into that? So first, though, we kind of got to get the basics. We got to, that's what I've tried to do in the book. Is I have a whole chapter on what I call the human extraterrestrial megapopulation. I have a whole chapter on the gray megapopulation that seems to be in conflict with the human megapopulation somehow. I have a whole chapter on the tall white extraterrestrials, because that Charles Hall case has brought in so many independent witnesses who have seen the tall whites and confirmed parts of Charles Hall's story. And in the Charles Hall story, you can go on OpenSETI and run down the left side of the page, and there will be an article on Charles Hall there. And basically, he was a weatherman back in the 1960s on Nellis Air Force Base up from Indian Springs there in the mountains, and he encountered the tall whites there, and the tall whites were kind of, and the Americans were kind of getting to know each other, and some people were getting killed. It was kind of a hostile environment to be thrown into, and ultimately they kind of worked things out, and it turns out that Nellis Air Force Base is built around, according to Charles Hall, at least two extraterrestrial bases. One, the tall white base, which is about 300 individuals, and the gray base, which is a lot more occupants to that base, according to what Charles Hall told me personally. So I got so interested in that case that I went out there and even found more independent witnesses to these tall whites. So what I'm trying to do in the book is, and then I have another chapter on extraterrestrial warfare that goes all the way back, perhaps 8 or 10,000 years ago. The Vedas, and the Vedas are just full, the Mahabharata and whatever, just full of extraterrestrial conflict, and we have that all the way up to the present day. In Russia, there's a case that I've referenced that I think several disc UFOs started attacking with beams of light, a golden UFO, and finally it crashed to the ground in Russia. And remarkably, there's quite a lot of cases that I was able to find that are credible in that regard. And then I have a whole chapter on what I call the alien resource cartel. That is basically these global corporations that got involved in reverse engineering these technologies early on. Some of your listeners will probably have read Colonel Philip Corso's book, The Day After Roswell, and in which these extraterrestrial technologies are brought into the marketplace for great profit and in the defense industry and in the secret space program. And so these industries are making trillions of dollars off of reverse engineering this technology and getting it into the marketplace and defense, and they got a monopoly on that. It's a lot like what OPEC has, except these are corporations owned by these bankers and global bankers and industrialists and some European royalty and whatever. And so that's what we're up against. These people, in the highest levels of business have contacts all through government, so in a sense they control governments. They control the media. They control the national security apparatus. William Parsec was a security expert out at Nellis Air Force Base. He was the one that came up with the idea of put sensors in fake rocks all around Nellis Air Force Base to prevent intrusions and whatever. And he attended a meeting in which this German baron showed up, and all these American generals were there briefing this German baron, and he realized that the national security apparatus of the United States was no longer under the control of Americans. It was under the control of Europeans. And he lost a couple of friends, and according to his wife, maybe his own life, digging into this.
Well, I tell you, I want to get back to that right after a break here. We're going to have to take a quick one here. This is Kate Valentine. I'm speaking to Ed Komarek. He's talking about his new book, UFOs, Exopolitics, and the New World Disorder. Ed, what's the best way for our audience to get a copy of that book?
It's available on Amazon.
Okay.
They discounted it, so it's a really good deal. Just about $11.50. I made the book really cheap, so that people could afford it, but they discounted it, so it's almost at a wholesale price now on Amazon. And the Kindle version I made free for your readers today. So anybody that's got a Kindle or wants to download some free software from Amazon can get the Kindle version of my book for free.
Wow, that's really good. That's excellent. Okay, we're just going to take a quick break. If you have questions for Ed right now, post them on our website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. After the break, we'd love to hear from you. Very controversial information, but very important. Hi, welcome back to the Kate Valentine UFO Show. I'm speaking to Ed Komarek about his new must-read book, UFOs, Exopolitics, and the New World Disorder. Love to hear from you. Post your comments, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. Ed, I'm sorry, I think I cut you a little bit short before the break. You were making some very nice offer to our listeners about the Kindle books.
Yeah, the Kindle book I made the Kindle book free today as a special promotion. They allow me several days out of every 3 months to make it free, and so I made it available for your listeners and anybody else that wants it. And also, I'm also on Facebook. If people want to friend me, I accept all friendships. Last time I was on your show, I ended up with about 20 or 30 new friends, so I know you've got a lot of listeners. And so I really appreciate you being on this show. And I also have a blog called exopolitics.blogspot.com /. But probably the best way is just, if you can type in my name, is Ed Komarek, spelled Komarek, and you can get in touch with me that way.
Well, I know just before the break, too, we were talking about this sort of a conspiracy of a sort, but you label it the breakaway civilization, and I think that's a really nice term and one that you might want to define, because we did have a question that came in from Casey, and Casey stated that he agrees, or she agrees, that the large companies are in control, which is what is preventing true disclosure. What is it going to take for citizens to gain control and benefit from this technology? That I know you devote chapters to that. That's a great question, and so I guess best to start with who's covering up, and that's the breakaway civilization.
Well, it's a normal thing that elites do. I mean, you can go back to ancient times in Rome. You know, the elite Romans had flush toilets and hot baths, and while other people had to go bathe in the river. are the North Koreans. You know, they have the most modern technology, cell phones and televisions and everything else, but their people are starving to death. So the elite tend to create their own little advanced breakaway society in every country.
Right.
And what this is just up on a much larger level, where the global elite have created what Richard Dolan, I think, coined the term breakaway society. Have actually created their own society. A lot of it's underground and underground bases, out of the public eye. They've got their own secret space program that seems to have developed from the German saucer program that began back in 1938 with a crash in Germany, and through Operation Paperclip and whatever, General Electric and other corporations brought in scientists that not only worked on the rocket program but on the electrogravitics programs and whatever. And so there's a very important paper that I published in its entirety. It's called the Wright-Patterson Electrogravitics document in 1956, and it's really a smoking gun that shows in 1956 all these major corporations like General Electric were working on reverse engineering these technologies, and they're even talking about putting compact nuclear power plants inside of flying saucers. And in 1959, Boyd Bushman, senior scientist Boyd Bushman, who worked at Lockheed Martin, showed on his second interview, he showed a schemata of a flying saucer that had a compact nuclear power plant in it in 1959. And so we can follow this timeline, all the way through the 1950s into the 1960s, in which Charles Hall was talking about the shuttlecraft, the tall white shuttlecraft that he was on there at Nellis, that the tall whites were using had Boeing and other big corporations' logos stamped into the different parts. So they were reverse engineering the tall whites craft, and the tall whites craft were even using those craft to travel around the Earth and that sort of thing. And so there's this very distinct timeline all the way to the secret space program that was really publicly first really brought out by a computer hacker called Gary McKinnon in England, and who they're still trying to extradite to the United States, that came across lists of whole numbers of off-world craft and lists of off-world officers. And we found out later that was called I was told that Gary didn't really come out with it, but he knows about that it was called Solar Warden, and I actually researched it and found many other different sources from other people that were aware of Solar Warden. And so now what we have is a carrier fleet, just like you have carrier fleets out in the ocean, but we have a carrier fleet out in space. With these big motherships or carrier craft that have a lot of these flying saucers in them, just like an aircraft carrier carries aircraft, they carry these saucers that are supposedly, according to Wendell Stevens, are made by Admiral Bobby Inman, who used to be head of the NSA, the SAIC Corporation, and then flown up to the carriers up in space. And there's supposed to be several of those carriers, a number of protectors, and a whole lot of saucers in this fleet. And this fleet, could present a grave danger if the Bilderberg Group, which seems to be in control, or the people behind the Bilderberg Group seem to be in control of all this, if they decided to launch a false flag alien invasion scenario using the secret space fleet against the nations of the world to scare everybody to death and try to get them to come together in this one world government in which they are in control over a one-world dictatorship. So there's a lot of serious issues at stake here.
Yeah, that seems to be modus operandi, too. I mean, they'll, as you said, a false flag attack, everyone gets frightened, and then certain social methods of control are put into place. So you think that perhaps this secret space program and the motherships that are circling the world at this time are from here, and in conjunction with these various alien races, and that they may fake an attack so that they can sort of bring about a new world order. Is that it, or the new world disorder, as you put it?
Yeah, there's not just one. There's several of these carriers at least.
Seriously?
By now there may be more, and apparently they're flying all over the solar system. Apparently, according to the sources that I have, that they have a base on Mars and bases on the Moon. And so they're like 50 to 60 years ahead of what the public knows, and the public is getting fed all this propaganda by NASA and the mass media and everything else while they're moving on out into space. Ben Rich, who was the head of the Lockheed Skunk Works that did a lot of this reverse engineering work, said that we have the technology to take ET home. So apparently they're already traveling to the stars now. So, I mean, Star Trek, if this were out in the open, Star Trek would be real for us in the public domain and not just for the super elite in their breakaway society where they could possibly be traveling to other star systems, and we're left here, barely making it. So it's this breakaway society is, it's just what elites do, is they create their own, breakaway society, and they, whenever you have a autocracy, the people at the top are the top predators or the top mafia that control everybody else all the way down. The resources all go to the top, and they control of all of society. And so we've got to develop a better organizational structure. And if our bodies operated this way, if the left hand would be getting fat and the right hand would be starving to death, and we wouldn't live very long. So we've got to create a society and that's going the way that our bodies operate. Our bodies are operated by supercomputers in the brain cells and in the cells and everything. We don't even realize how digestion takes place, and the cells are fed, the blood flows through the body, feeds the cells, takes away the waste products. Well, a really advanced society, supercomputers will take care of all that, and people will be fed and taken care of as they should be, so they can concentrate on what's important, not just on basic survival needs and that sort of thing. That'll all be taken care of by computers and whatever. And so this is another reason, for a cover-up, is because these global leaders realize that if we had direct contact with these more ethical races, that we would see how well they were living, and we'd want to emulate that. So we wouldn't have much use for our present leaders today. And this would throw us in direct conflict with our leaders and create a global civil war. And just like what you got in Syria, the people in Syria realize there's a better way. They want democracy. They want, better living standards. They're in communication with the rest of the world, but their leadership is willing to die, keeping them from getting what they want.
But see, the Romans long ago realized that too, and they kept control because they used the theory of bread and circuses. They felt if everyone was well fed and entertained, everybody'd be happy, and the government could go on. And that lasted for the Pax Romana, 200 years. And then the upper classes got a little greedy, just like you're saying, and then it was a problem.
Yeah, well, they got plenty of circuses, but they're running out of food right now. And as people get hungry, they're starting to rebel a little bit. So yeah. These greedy elite are cutting their own throats because basically by taking so much and leaving so little for the rest, they're inviting revolution and people to wake up and get on to exactly what I'm talking about here and go after them. I mean, we're getting names and addresses now. The latest Bilderberg meeting that was in Virginia back in early June, they were demonstrators out there, Alex Jones and others, and they were taking pictures of everybody that was going into this Bilderberg meeting. Kissinger, Obama's economic advisor, the head of the Department of Treasury, Romney was there. They don't know if Obama was there. All this is going on in secret, and it's not even mentioned in the mainstream press. The AP actually showed up, but they never reported on this. So here you have this secret meeting going on once a year in different places all over the world by the world's top leaders in finance and in industry and in politics and military. The head of the NSA was there. Well, all these people all meeting in secret and not reported.
No, it's not secret. They're just looking out for us, Ed. You know that. Anyway, we've got to take another quick break. By the way, Ed, you got 3 very nice thank yous from a guest and from Earl and from Dale, who downloaded the Kindle, and they say to thank you very much. Anyway, thank you. We're going to take a short break. Kate Valentine here on 1160 WVNJ. speaking to Ed Komerak about his new book. It's a must-read for you out there, UFOs, Exopolitics, and the New World Disorder. We'll be right back. We'd love to hear from you. Post your comments at AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. Be right back. Hi, welcome back to the Cape Valentine UFO Show on 1160 WVNJ. I'm speaking with Ed Komarek. Your thoughts, your comments, and your opinions are certainly welcome, and you can post them now on our website, AtlanticCoastUFOs.com. Wow, you're getting a few questions here, Ed, well, I did want you to go over first, though, the Bilderberg group, because, that's one of those things that really have stayed secret, or, when you do hear about it, it's, nothing going on here, just move along, and yet it has become really a powerful international force.
Well, I've been digging into it, and it was created, people can Google it on the internet, but... Okay. It was created in 1954, and it was named by Prince of Bernard. I'm maybe not pronounced his name right, of the Netherlands, who was he was a German who was a German SS. He was in the German SS before the war, and he was one of the founders of the Bilderberg Group in 1954, and also the head of the CIA at the time was very involved in the formation of Bilderberger. And if you look back, the way to understand something that's going on in the present is to understand its history. And what we're seeing here is the core of this group are Nazis and fascists that right after the war perhaps came up with a plan B, being that they lost the overt war to develop the Third Reich or the Fourth Reich or whatever in a covert way, which is just the New World Order repackaged again, a plantation in which we're the serfs and they're the masters. And they've been acting step by step on this ever since the war, and they were the ones, and they have admitted to it, they created the European Union, they created the European currency. They want a North American Union. They want an Asian Union. They want the world divided up into four different unions, and so that they can better control everybody. And the same thing is they're pushing it down through Agenda 21 is coming right down to the grassroots, right down here in the Grady County, where we fought against zoning 9-1 against and stopped zoning. But zoning is a part of this Agenda 21 that comes out of the UN. But the UN is heavily influenced by the industrialists and the bankers and European royalty as well, and so they're clamping down on us in all kinds of ways through our governments, because they're in control of our governments now. We're no longer in control of our governments. These top bankers and industrialists and some European royalty are actually working through groups like Bilderberger to create this new world order with them as masters and us as serfs. And interestingly enough, the Bilderberger was founded in 1954, and that was supposedly when whistleblowers had said that Eisenhower first met with aliens, different alien types.
A lot of stuff came out of the 50s, a lot. Dale Lewis wrote in to say, in talking about the elite, the show X-Files referred to them many times. How close do you think the show was to showing who they were and their agendas?
Well, you got to be really careful, because not only do they control, they have control over the media. I mean, these different corporations own the mass media outlets, and as well as they have CIA that has admitted that it's in every major news organization in the country. So that they're controlling the media, they're controlling the military. They're controlling all aspects of the whole national security operations, in which they are at the top of the pile with the need to know, the ultimate need to know, and the highest security clearances. And that's what Admiral Wilson found out when he talked to Stephen Greer, and he went to find out where this program originated from, and he was met by corporate lawyers who asked him, said the only reason they met with him was because they wanted to know where he got his information from, but they were the gatekeepers. It wasn't any public official that was elected or anything. It was corporate lawyers that were in control over this special access program.
Wow. And then Steve wrote in, too. He said, and I'm going to read you two questions in a row. Steve said, do you think this has something to do with NASA discontinuing space exploration publicly? And then Earl wrote in with a sort of another question along those lines. A lot goes on over at the National Reconnaissance Office, NASA's evil twin. I would think that any black space program aircraft, especially those using reverse engineered technology, would be under the auspices of the NRO. Do you have any comments or knowledge in this regard? So this breakaway civilization is really getting into the secret space program as well, according to you.
Yeah, the Bilderbergers control all of this. They control the movies that you're seeing. I mean, they've been in the propaganda movies and during World War II, you know, and the propaganda the public all the way to the press. They've got a lot of experience. So what they've been doing is apparently they've been behind a lot of these scary alien invasion movies and perhaps preparing us for a false flag alien eventually, you know, that the very people that are ridiculing and scoffing at all this, be the first to go screaming to their government for more controls on their lives and everything else, you know, because the aliens are invading. You know, all they've got to do is shoot up a few cities with their space fleet and pull out some alien bodies and blame it on the aliens, and people will all come together to fight these aliens. And that's what, you know, what the idea is behind it. And it's nothing new. I mean, if you look at in Operation Paperclip, Dulles brought out of Operation Paperclip a complete German intelligence unit into the CIA against Truman's orders, in which Truman said he didn't want any people with dangerous Nazi backgrounds in the United States. But Dulles did it anyway, and he brought this special German intelligence unit, SS, into the CIA, and of course that unit had experience probably with the burning of the Reichstag and blaming it on the Jews. And so, and very likely they're the unit that's behind the 9/11 attacks, false flag attacks, which appear to be false flag attacks. And so the next one we're afraid of is going to be the alien invasion false flag, so that everybody will give up even more of their rights.
Well, you know, Ronald Reagan envisioned that too, but I think he had it on sort of a more benign thing, that people would come together and just be nice, as opposed to falling under the thumb of some overlord. Just for the interest of our audience, one of the guests has posted an Agenda 21 for Dummies on the website. It's really interesting. Take a look at it. You know, the Alabama has already banned. Alabama's legislature met and already banned Agenda 21 in Alabama. And most people never even heard of it. You know, that's the scary thing. You know,
because what they're doing is they're using environmental sustainability and economic development in order to put more and more controls on citizens down the class route. Now, it didn't used to have a permit to build my own cabin. Now I've got to have 5 permits to build a cabin: one for electricity, one for structure, one for you know, plumbing, And I've got to have another permit for a well. I've got to have another permit for a septic tank. So there's 7 permits I've got to have just to build it. And each one of those is a fee that I have to pay to a little Nazi here in Grady County, that building inspector.
Okay.
So it goes all the way down to grassroots, and people are all feeling it on the grassroots, so they don't know a lot of where it's coming from. But when we started pushing back and we stopped zoning in this county, we found that there was NGOs connected to the UN that were behind the RDC, or the Regional Development Authority, which is over several counties here in this area. And it goes right up to the UN, and then you just go from the UN right to the Bilderberg Group, to these bankers and these top industrialists and bankers and European royalty or whatever.
Well, here's the thing. Like, Len Kastner was on. He had a great point. He said almost everything today comes out of the 50s, and I think you'd probably agree with him. But, that was the 50s. That was 70 years ago. So whoever was conspiring, let's say World Order, New Nazis, whatever, now, that was 70 years ago. Those people are dead. Who took over for them? Do you have any idea? Was it just handed off?
Well, they have a lot of experience in this. These royal families, the people die, but the royal family continues. Look at the royal family in England. And so their families continue. Their children go into the CIA, you know, when they were young, you know, and then they go into the media from the CIA. Their children are in the NSA. You know, and when they die, their children take over.
Yeah, but you know, children have a real way of just going against their parents, against revolting what their parents think. Has there been anybody that's crossed the line and come out and said, "Hey, you know, we got a real problem here. You guys better become aware of it"?
Well, some children are that way, but a lot of children just follow in their parents' footsteps, you know, in their parents' ideologies. Look at the Rockefellers. You know, here you had, you know, the Rockefeller boom in the 1920s killed a lot of people and whatever, monopolized, you know, with Standard Oil. You know, then it moved right on to David Rockefeller now, who's a main ingredient in the Bilderberger group. And you have the Rothschilds, who've been for centuries involved in banking and control and in control of using money as a mechanism of control throughout Europe.
Well, I remember one of the princes of the Rothschild family committed suicide with a sash from his bathrobe, and he hung himself from a towel rack in the bathroom. So, and yet,
look at Lawrence Rockefeller. Lawrence Rockefeller is a good guy. He tried to get with the Clinton administrator to get the truth out to the public, but you can see how far he got because David Rockefeller and these money people are so much more powerful. You know, Lawrence can only do so much.
Now, he's passed away, is that correct?
The what?
Lawrence Rockefeller is dead now, is that correct?
I'm not sure either.
You know, sure. I'll tell you, it's a very interesting point that you bring up because I distinctly remember reading a newspaper report that he had been killed in an automobile accident by a teenager who was driving under the influence. And then suddenly, you can't find that anywhere, and it seems like, yeah, he is dead, and then other people say, no, he's not. And that connected to his attempt to bring it out into the public via the Clintons. It's sort of an interesting backstory there, I think.
Yeah. I dealt with his head of his command. I never dealt with him directly, but I communicated years ago with with the guy that was under him. I forget his name or whatever, but. So, you know, I also heard that there was a guy in Army intelligence as a friend of our family, and he said that Nelson Rockefeller was very heavy into this and in the Army intelligence matters, and so Nelson Rockefeller was very involved. So these families continue through their foundations, their tax-exempt foundations. You know, they got all different ways of continuing through corporations. Even after they die, the corporation continues, the family continues, and whatever. And that's what we're up against. Fortunately, it seems like their egos are the children are not quite as smart. They're more greedy than their parents are, and they're coming more in the open, just like they did this whole thing at the Olympics, you know, for billions of listeners, you know, with this occult symbology at the Olympics that they broadcast all over the world, the opening ceremonies and everything, you know.
Wait, we'll get back to that right after the break. That's a good one. This is Kate Valentine. I'm speaking to Ed Komarek about his new book, UFOs Exopolitics, The New World Disorder. You can get a free copy of this on the Kindle right now, and you should tell your friends about it. It's a great book. We'll be right back after a short break. You have questions, you can post them right now at AtlanticCoastUFOs.com, and give Ed a big thank you after the show on his blog spot. I'll be right back. Hi, welcome back to the Kate Valentine UFO Show, 1160 WVNJ. I'm speaking to Ed Komarek. He is the author of UFOs, Exopolitics, and the New World Disorder. You can also get a copy of his book now on Kindle. Ed has very generously given that to our audience today only for free. Ed, just before the break, you were talking about the secret symbols in the Olympics. That is so cool. I think you're the only one that's brought it out publicly. Could you just tell our audience about that?
It's really been out on the internet a lot. You know, I've posted a number of links to my wall, you know, to it. Occult, you know, symbology goes way back. Masonic, you know, I'm not really against the Masons. Some of them are really good people. You know, I actually got my hands on a Masonic Bible when I was a young man, and I found it very interesting. But unfortunately, just like money corrupts everything. Money is into everything. Money right now is in control of all these institutions. Even the Masonic Lodge, the highest level adepts, I'm afraid, are Satanists. Are very dangerous people, and they're using this occult symbology, and they came out with it in the Olympics in an unbelievable way. The lighting, was like triangles. The eye and the pyramid, all this stuff. Even NASA on its rover website showed they were showing the how to resolve images, and they resolved the image right down on the all-seeing eye on the pyramid on the dollar.
Yeah,
and this is how blatant these guys are. And if you look at Parsec, when he was, when Baron Jusko Puttenhammer or whatever came and he was being deferred to by all this American military and whatever, I went in. It's all in the book, and I went in and checked his history. His father was the head of the propaganda ministry in China. He got 30 years as a rabid Nazi. His father.
Wow.
And Puttenhammer was brought in 1962 under Operation Paperclip and rose up high in the NASA. So I assume he's the one that's behind NASA and its propaganda operations. He would be the perfect individual because he was probably trained by his father.
Yeah, it is funny how it all starts to tie together. Doug, thank you. He wrote in about Lawrence Rockefeller, it seems, is now with the ages. He's died at the age of 94. And Al wrote in to say thank you, Ed, for the download. He loves your book, and he agrees with you totally.
It's also in paperback, and the format is a lot better. I wrote it for paperback, so the formatting in paperback is a lot better than the Kindle, but and at a price of $11.50, you really can't go wrong. And Christmas is coming up, so hopefully if people like it enough, they'll use these as as Christmas presents. For people. It was always the book that I always wanted to give to my skeptical friends, and then say, read this, and then argue with me later.
I can't agree with you more. It's important to get the word out, and this is the press, the media are not doing it, so this is the way. If our audience wants to know, how do we make this public? That's how. Buy a few copies, send them around. That's a great idea.
Share information. I mean, people can friend me at Facebook. Every day I put several news items. There's things going on every day. New information is coming out to the public, just like the symbolism at the Olympics and all this kind of stuff. And then people don't just like it, share it. Click the share button and share information, because that's how we raise our consciousness, is by sharing with others. Because we share with others, it builds them up, and then they share with us, and it builds us up. As long as it's good quality information. Don't share, garbage. Share good quality information, and that builds up your own consciousness. It builds up the power of the network in which you're embedded in.
Nothing like destroying evil, like putting light on it. But you devote a whole chapter toward the end of your book, and it's entitled "Take Back Our Future." So, what do you think? Do you think we have any chance against this entrenched sort of conspiracy type overlords?
Well, in the Bible, they call it the beast, and it was the head of the 12 nations or whatever, and who can come up against the beast and whatever. But the thing is, it seems to be these younger generations seem to be getting overconfident. They are incredibly powerful, but with truth shines on it, I think it could begin to crumble, and so they have the best intelligence money can buy, as far as what's going on with extraterrestrial contact. And so the best that I can do is try to take my knowledge from my lifetime and pull it together while I'm still able to do it. I'm going to be 64 here pretty soon. My dad started flipping at about 65, and he never got his fire book together like he should have done, for the public. So I made sure that I get this out, and so this is kind of my gift to humanity, just like the books that I read as a young man were gifts to me that helped me evolve in my development. So I think people, if they read this book, I think they will really get a jump on their understanding and their ability to fight against this adversary who seems to be incredibly powerful, but at the same time has vulnerabilities.
Now, I think it's the vulnerabilities that scare me the most, because let's just say that you are quite correct and there is a controlling elite of whatever nature. After 70 years and a new generation and perhaps a third generation by now, they start to lose that, how would you say, that initial thrust. Now, if they start to break down, what are the chances of another conspiracy coming in to take their place? That's a little scary too, because
what's going on? We're talking mostly about the Western oligarchs. Now, the Western oligarchs are in a big conflict with the Russian oligarchs right now. At the latest Bilderberg meeting, they had two of the dissenters there that were going to run against Putin, and so Putin apparently kicked the Rothschilds out of Russia. So right now, the Russians and Bilderberg are not getting along, and Bilderberg is trying to undermine Putin. In the same way, the Chinese oligarchs over there are a little concerned about what's going on, too, and how powerful these Bilderberger is, and how you got McDonald's in every country of the world, and it connects right to Bilderberger through these main names. There's a graphic on my webpage that somebody went to a lot of work to do an organizational chart, and it has Bilderberger in the middle, and it has these lines going out to all the people that attend these Bilderberger meetings, and then the lines go to all these corporations that these core individuals are connected to, McDonald's and McDonnell Douglas and General Electric and all that. And so people definitely want to look at that chart. I mean, somebody really did their homework on that chart. So we're up against a formidable adversary, but if once we understand what's being done to us, once we understand that we're under covert attack and have been for 70 years, then we begin to protect ourselves. But we've got to get beyond what happened at Roswell, or what is that light in the sky, or did Eisenhower meet with aliens in 1954, and think about the implications of contact. What are these people so scared of? Why are they so scared that the people will get to know that these ethical ETs live so well, and that we'll want to emulate them, and that we won't have need for our current leaders or whatever, and create end up with a civil war. I mean, they know all this. That's why they acted early. That's why they acted 70 years ago to stay in control of this technology, both for profit and also to protect their already outmoded industries. They don't want the fossil fuels industry, transportation industry, pharmaceutical industry to go the way of the gaslight companies when the electric light bulb was invented.
Wow.
I mean,
wow.
They're dealing with issues. They saw this technology would put a lot of their corporations and industries out of business.
They'll come up with new ones. As Doug wrote in to say, knowledge is power. Well, Ed, as I said at the beginning of this show, 1 hour would never be enough to cover all the information, thoughts, and conclusions that you've reached in your book that you've gathered together over decades. Your book, UFOs, Exopolitics, and the New World Disorder, it's just great, and our audience will have to get a copy and find out for themselves. So again, how is your book available to them?
Okay, it's available on Amazon in both print and on Kindle, and today we have it free on Kindle for your listeners and anybody else that wants to download it for free.
Okay.
But they can also contact me on Facebook if they want a little bit of daily information on their Facebook feeds. I do that too.
And that's Ed Komarek, Komarek, and really go to the Facebook page. It's really, you've got a great one, and your blog spot was terrific too. I got a lot of information out of both. Well, Ed, thank you so much for being here and for such thought-provoking insights into today's world. Sincere thanks, as always, to both Bill and Dave for all their help in bringing this show to the air. Of course, always a big thank you to our sponsors. As always, the biggest thank you is to you, our listeners. You can hear us now, not only live, but on podcast and YouTube. So we'll see you next Friday at 1. Our guest then will be Albert Wenzel, another very interesting guy with a lot of interesting thoughts. And until next Friday, this is Kate Valentine reminding you to keep your eye on the sky. Bye.
into the issues and involving extraterrestrial contact because they don't even know if UFOs exist or if they're extraterrestrial. And so I have to kind of take people step by step through the book, chapter by chapter. And in the first chapter, for instance, I start with evolution on other worlds. That there are many different types of extraterrestrials being reported, and we have some very good cases. And they seem to be evolving in ways similar to ourselves. But for instance, if the asteroid hadn't hit the Earth and knocked the dinosaurs way back and leaving only the birds, an intelligent dinosaur may have evolved from this planet. If the asteroid had hit it was even more destructive and killed off everything but insects. We know how tough insects are. The insects may have evolved an intelligent insect. And so this is basically what we're seeing in a lot of these credible reports, that there are many different types of extraterrestrials, and they're interacting many different ways amongst themselves and with us. And we really need to get up to speed on that. And in order to move into that area, into the Star Trek positive vision of our future, rather than the destructive vision and propaganda and brainwashing that's been applied to the public for the last 70 years by some elite corporate bankers, industrialists, and European royalty, who essentially control access to extraterrestrial technologies for their own. Together, my 40 years of experience in the field, and there's a lot of garbage out there and trash, scammers and all this sort of thing. And what I try to do is, sort through all that, sort through all the ore, and find those few gold nuggets. And what I did was take the best cases of both extraterrestrial contact and whistleblower testimony and use that as a basis for my concepts in the book. And what I'm trying to do is bring people beyond the collection and analysis stage of intelligence work to a point where they move into the issues and implications of extraterrestrial contact. Not worrying about trying to figure out what happened at Roswell, or did Eisenhower meet with aliens in 1954, or what was that light in the sky, but what are the implications and issues regarding extraterrestrial contact. And the point that I'm making is that we're up against a formidable adversary of special interest that had the best intelligence available from the CIA and NSA MJ-12, in which they were all connected, to move right up from the collections and analysis stage up to implications and issues, and act on those issues in a way that's been very destructive for humanity in order to protect their own interests in corporate interest in industries. And the problem that we have is that people have a problem even getting own benefit to make trillions of dollars. And then, of course, you have the involvement of the press and the media not doing their job and bringing it all to light. That's another thing. But I find it interesting. You define yourself also as a naturalist and ecologist, and that is one thing that differentiates your book from others, is that you actually classify and describe various species of extraterrestrials that have been reported both by abductees and contactees. And I think it's essential to know who we're dealing with, and you bring that out. Frequently, some of the other authors just say ET, period, and they let it go at that. You are very specific as to who's here and what they might be here for. Yeah, we need to know that before we can get into this issues and area, because it makes a difference, if there's just one type or two types of ETs, or whether there's a whole bunch of different types. How are we going to align ourselves? Are we going to align ourselves with the more advanced, ethically advanced races, or are we going to align ourselves more with, say, the Greys or the insectoid types that seem to be a lot like the Borg? So it's kind of up to us, what is how are we going to fit into this scheme of things? And before we can even begin to think about that, we have to realize that there's a lot of different types of extraterrestrial races being reported. Even human extraterrestrials, that some that are almost exactly like us to ones that are a lot different than us, that are very
Mighty phantoms of the evening sky, to whom do these celestial steeds belong when you appear to us like gods on high, which brings you here to mystify?
Hi, welcome to the Kate Valentine UFO Show. We're with you live on 1160 WVNJ. The good news today is that Ed Komarek is back with us. The bad news is that the 1 hour that we have for this interview is barely enough to cover even the main topics that he brings up in his brilliant, just published book, UFOs, Exopolitics, and the New World Disorder. Welcome to the show, Ed. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Kate.
Hi. Oh, it's hard for me to know where I start to review your book with you. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to take a quote from your dedication and just read it. It's, if our leaders had not failed us in the 1940s and the 1950s, the positive vision of Star Trek could now have become our present-day reality. In this book, you will show that had our leaders embarked on a policy of openness and transparency in regard to extraterrestrial contact in the 1950s, rather than secrecy and cover-up, human evolution would have moved forward instead of backward, and the Earth's environment protected. That's quite a statement, and I think that's sort of the theme of your book.
Yes. Basically, what I try to do in the book is pull the small down to 18 inches or so, all the way up to 12, 13, 14 feet. Albert Rosales has done some of the best work on humanoid contact cases, and he has over 4,000 cases since the 1940s, that I reference in the book, and people having contact with a lot of different types of human or humanoid type extraterrestrials. So how do we fit into that? So first though, we kind of got to get the basics. We got to, that's what I've tried to do in the book. Is I have a whole chapter on what I call the human extraterrestrial megapopulation. I have a whole chapter on the gray megapopulation that seems to be in conflict with the human megapopulation somehow. I have a whole chapter on the tall white extraterrestrials, because that Charles Hall case has brought in so many independent witnesses who have seen the tall whites and confirmed parts of Charles Hall's story. And in the Charles Hall story, you can go on Open SETI and run down the left side of the page, and there will be an article on Charles Hall there. And basically, he was a weatherman back in the 1960s on Nellis Air Force Base, up from Indian Springs there in the mountains, and he encountered the tall whites there, and the tall whites were kind of, and the Americans were kind of getting to know each other, and some people were getting killed. It was kind of a hostile environment to be thrown into, and ultimately they kind of worked things out, and it turns out that Nellis Air Force Base is built around